You absolutely can never be politically partisan if you're a pastor. That's the kind of thing that I hear sometimes. What do you make of that claim? Well, what does being partisan even mean? Look, let's just lay it out on the table here. There is a very good reason that a pastor might have for wanting to not be partisan. But when I say very good, I mean it's the kind of reason that it's strong. But is it righteous? The reason is he has people in his church that are on different sides of an issue, and it would be inconvenient for him to divide his church if he were to say, this is where I stand on it, and then people would say, well, I don't want to donate money to your church anymore. So when I say it's a very good reason, perhaps what I mean is it's a very corrupt reason. It's a very strong reason, psychologically. So now that we've laid that out, let's talk about this idea of being partisan. Would it be wrong for a pastor to say this is right and this is wrong? You should not support this, you should support this. How do you know? Well, it's not easy to figure out, but a pastor's role is to teach people the word from God, especially teaching people the Bible, and to a degree teaching people the common sense applications that come from the Bible using logic. The good necessary consequences thereof, which would be consequences of applying your mind to the scripture. So, for instance, you could tell that it would be immoral to support something or say something is good if the Bible is against it. And it would be immoral to say that this person that's trying to accomplish some goal right now in society, it'd be wrong to say, I support that if the Bible is against it. Now, a lot of pastors will go that far. They'll say, for instance, that it's wrong to be pro-abortion. Seems like a pretty easy thing for a pastor to be able to say. But what about the government being redistributing wealth constantly? Is that the kind of thing that the pastor is willing to say an opinion about? Does the Bible have an opinion about that issue? Well, it's not really an opinion if it's the Bible, is it? Yeah, according to the Bible, it is slavery. Slavery when you tax the people highly. So we need to ask ourselves, why do the pastors not want to talk about that issue? Is that issue of less importance? I mean, enslaving 300 million people versus killing 1 million people, they're both really weighty issues. So we need to talk about them both. So when a pastor says that he should not be partisan, it seems like what he's saying is, I don't want to be beholden to a specific political party. Now there's wisdom to that. You don't want to be anybody's tool. You want, as a pastor, to be speaking to the society, to the church, to the political parties, and you want to be saying, this is what God says, this is right, this is wrong. You want to expose wickedness. You want to expose evil and tell people. Now, you wouldn't want to be the kind of person who says, well, I'm going to close my mouth when the Republican Party does something wrong because I don't want to undermine the Republican Party. I think you should criticize the Republican Party. But you also should not be the kind of person who stays quiet on what the Democratic Party is doing. And not just on the issue of abortion. So what does partisan even mean? When you hear people saying, I don't want to be partisan, a pastor shouldn't be partisan. Well, let's look up some definitions. A committed member of a political party or an army. So I guess they're saying, I don't want to be a committed member of the Republican Party if I'm a pastor. Really? Would that be wrong? Or how about, I don't want to be a committed member of the army that I'm in. If, say, a pastor is a chaplain, or say a pastor gets drafted and he goes into war, he doesn't want to be a committed member of his own country's army? Really? The pastors that led the American Revolutionary War would have a lot to say to a subhuman like that. So, partisan means a committed member of a political party or an army. I think if you're a Christian, you should seek to be a committed member of some political party or army, or to build one, or the other, if necessary, if there aren't any good ones around. These are virtuous things. Why would you not want to be part of those things? If you could find a virtuous one, or create one. Partisan can also mean a person who strongly supports his party's policies and is reluctant to compromise with political opponents. Well, what has compromising ever got us? I mean, should we be compromising on abortion? Should we be compromising on slavery? Enslaving people financially through taxation? Should we be compromising on LGBTQ indoctrination of children. So when somebody says, I don't want to be partisan, are they saying that they want to compromise? Think about it here. 5 minutes of thought will get you far in this world. Well, it also does take on a pejorative connotation. And the reason why it does is because very often somebody that's in Congress will say, well, my opponent is playing to the partisan interests and they don't want to do a bilateral agreement. They don't want bipartisan agreement on this. So that's abusive language. That's manipulative because it's as if you're saying, oh, he's too extreme. He believes in what he thinks too much and therefore he's wrong. Well, that's not logical. What if the person actually is right? And what if they are 100% committed to what's right? You're going to throw that out? No, you have to weigh the issue on its merits, not on how committed the people are to the issue. But often partisan has become an insult. It's, oh, he's partisan. That means he's biased. He is emotionally loyal to this one group or this one idea or cause, to the point where he's not even thinking about it. He's not going to give it any thought whatsoever. I try to tell him, well, here's the reasons, and he won't even listen to me. Well, that's quite an accusation to make about someone. Is that really what you mean when you say partisan? Because if not being willing to listen to other sides of an argument is partisanship, then I would reject it. But I don't think that's really what we're talking about here, and I think you know it. And I think that this is an ambiguity, an equivocation, and a fallacy. Now, we already have a word for somebody who is unthinkingly loyal to their tribe. We would call them a tribalist. It's tribalism. They're tribalistic. And those things are not good. And if that's what we're talking about, then I reject it. And in fact, I have a lot to say about why we need to reject that. But in my judgment, the term partisan, it's becoming useless. So when a pastor says, oh, it would be wrong for a pastor to be partisan, I would point out to the pastor, your use of that word is useless unless we can talk through what you mean by it and unless we can come to some kind of understanding together. Because just as it stands, the way that society uses that word, it's an anti-concept. It's similar to, in my opinion, the way the word selfishness has been turned into something that means you are seeking your own interest in a way that is by definition, built into the very definition, sinful, which makes it so that it's difficult to ask yourself, well, is there some kind of seeking your own interest that's not sinful? And it's difficult to conceptualize it. We have to come up with different words because people have taken a word that was one time value neutral and they've changed the definition. They've twisted the concept in a way that makes it an anti-concept. It makes it difficult to use as a concept. Well, if you haven't already seen enough of the case for that, just think about how people use it on the news when somebody says, oh, they're engaged in partisanship. And think about how when you're watching the news or you're watching the Speaker of the House use that word, what they're trying to do to manipulate you and your thoughts. Now, this does play well to the general public because most people want to get along with other people. Most people understand that we've got to make some compromises sometimes for political purposes. Most people understand that it would be better if we weren't all trying to hurt each other and destroy each other all the time and that we should work together in some way. So we understand that. All right. So when you get on the news and you say, we need a bipartisan effort for this or that, people tend to perk up their ears and think, oh, well, that sounds like it could have some potential. Typically, though, if you know your history or if you've really paid attention, you'll understand that bipartisan simply means that people in both political parties are planning to do something that's going to harm you. They're going to work together against you. That's, if anybody's ever paid attention, you'd know that that's what they do. So pastors, how silly are you to get fooled by that kind of rhetorical trick? I mean, pastors ought to be the wisest. They ought to be the intellectual beacons to help people understand. But pastors usually are no better than the general public in understanding the times and what should be done these days. Of course, that's why we have ChristianIntellectual.com. That's what we're all about, trying to help pastors. Now, if a pastor wants to avoid being beholden to a single political party because the values represented by a single party may or may not match Scripture, well, that's fine. I accept that. But if a pastor doesn't want to tell you that voting for this person is evil when it clearly is, then I have to ask, what kind of leader are you? Do you know what the word lead means? A pastor should be like a prophet. Not a servant to the political party, but a servant to the truth, all of God's truth, all of the truth that you know for certain and that you can demonstrate to other people. That is what the pastor should be teaching, especially on moral matters. And guess what? Politics is a moral matter. In America today, one major political party has a stated platform that is basically good and moral. It's too general, and the party doesn't do a good job of actually upholding the things they say they believe. That's the Republican Party. But the platform is fine. The other has a platform that is evil in every significant way, and it is run at the national level by politicians who are evil in every significant way. Completely unpraiseworthy men. And here we have Christian leaders trying to be diplomatic. Who told you you should even be a leader if you don't have fortitude? I'd tell you to your face that you shouldn't. The pastors have failed. They've failed to name the truth, and they've failed in every significant way on this issue. They are attempting to maintain unity in their churches the way a coward would. They are attempting to stay away from much of the political controversy that our society is facing. The best resource on this trend I want to recommend to you. It's a book by Jeff Cleaver. It's called Blood Red Church: How Redemption Colors Our Politics. He asked me to write the foreword for the book, and he even invited my input on some of the chapters and the material inside it. So I've read this book forward and backward, and I believe in it. You can read what I had to say about the book if you go to christianintellectual.com/Blood Red Church with dashes in between, or just look it up on Amazon and get the book. There is a man who's not a coward and who knows how to be a pastor. Be like Jeff. Thanks for listening today. God bless.